Good morning, everyone. This is Robert T.Green, the CEO of Pre-Post Game, also known as Players Rep, here to educate and empower and protect the athletes and the family's best interests alone. We're doing another edition of Where We Are in the Sports Business today, presented by Robert T. Green, the Players Rep. I really hate to have to do this topic. I'm going to take a few moments to let people get in here. In the meantime, for more information on our company, what we do, in order to ensure your athletes responsible, respected, remember, check us out at prepostgame.com, PRE-POSTGAME.com. So these are one of these moments, once again, I have to address the population at large pertaining to the sports and sports industry, and help people recognize what's going on today. You guys might not have heard of a guy named Louis Nix a couple weeks ago, Vincent Jackson. And when I talk about terms such as sports trafficking is real, so many people are quick to throw accolades and adulation pertaining to a coach and their success and all the things that go on in the space that, essentially without the player, their profession doesn't exist. But yet the media at large, even the coaches in general, whose job is supposedly, quote unquote, to develop the athlete for long-term success, to instill values, to instill understanding, to instill goals and life skills that translate into life after sports. When the reality is that is the last thing that this actual industry in that profession does. Never forget that this profession gave us Jerry Sandusky in a major Power 5 conference in Penn State. Never forget this industry gave us Larry Nassar out of Michigan State with all those women, and obviously just recently where the former Olympic coach had killed himself after being found guilty of doing all these damage to these actual young girls for decades. And where were us as parents, where were us as advocates of athletes outside of the fact of what they could do on that court, field, tumbler? Where were we to actually protect them, to empower them, to help them understand that they are more than an athlete, they're human beings, and their life matters more than what that coach says to or about them? What that coach says on TV out front and tells you that it's a team game, but then when the doors close and shut, tell you that you ain't shit, tell you that you're going to find somebody else, tell you they're going to send you back to where you came from, the ghetto, so forth. Doesn't matter which university. As you guys know, I represent a group of athletes and parents from the University of Iowa pertaining to racism and bullying over 2 decades. The longest tenured head coach in college football, Kirk Ferentz, still remains employed at the University of Iowa. Tell me, what has the University of Iowa as a whole done for African Americans and their plight in America as a whole, outside of putting them out there to basically generate revenue, to basically fund and get those guys paid and to run their city? Trust the facts, not the process. The fact that when you got young men that are in 38 years old and their young 30s, they don't feel like their quality of life matters, that they no longer can play the game, that they're willing to take their life instead of understanding that, that sport was just a short-term, short-lived scenario, and that they no longer play and can win a game, that they're still valuable to not only themselves but to other people. But they don't feel that way, and that's all a basically situation that's been directly attributed to sports and the people that's actually their circle of influence. That, as I say, the higher that they go up, the worse that it becomes. Because if you don't know who you are outside of the game of football, outside of the game of basketball, any sport, it's just like any other animal that you race in horse races. Once that race is ran so many times and that horse can no longer perform, you put it out to pasture. The sports industry led by coaches is operated the same exact way. And the majority of people, parents who don't understand, that come from communities that basically feel like without a sport or entertainment that their sons and daughters won't make it. And at the same time, some of those parents and some of those people in this space, those coaches, want to sell those actual students, athletes, to other people. No different than human trafficking and sex trafficking. Trust the facts, not the process. I bring this information to you guys because no one else will or can. I back this up. I stand on what I say. But the fact of the matter is that no one's talking about how 2 people under 40 years old that played in National Football League is dead all of a sudden out of nowhere. In hotels, desolate, by themselves, isolated. And again, as the players, if this no one understand, I lived and living this experience to ensure that the athletes that come after me don't repeat the process. I know what it feels like to be depressed. I know what it feels like to not feel like you matter in life. I know what it feels like to feel like only thing you do and matter about is a sport that you play. I literally disappeared part of my pro career when no one could find me outside of the people that was employing me, simply for the fact that every question that came to me wasn't how I was doing, wasn't how I was everything, was who you playing for next. Are you mad about the NFL? Are you this and that? Everything pertaining to sports, nothing about me per se. Gave me the insight on what was really going on, and essentially let me know that those people that was coming to me were no different than any other sports trafficker out there. So I removed them out of my life as soon as I possibly could, which allowed me to educate myself, allowed me to empower myself, and allowed me to protect myself. And then I put that into an actual business, and then now we have pre-post game to ensure those same athletes, as they're growing up, going through this process, recognize that they're more than an athlete. So for all you guys out there that quick to quote a coach and quote an athlete who don't have any idea how this stuff works, I want you to sit back and think about something for a second. While you talking about you like what this coach did and what he did with this one and how he does this, how he does that, you're actually putting yourself in a box that you really don't want to be in. Because you really know the fact of the matter is, you talk about coaches, what a great coach looks and sounds like. You got guys, this for example, like a Butch Davis and a Larry Coker. Two, for those that don't know, I'm here to educate you guys. When I talk about things and people, I like to give context. So the Miami Hurricanes are one of the greatest football programs in the history of college football based on what society says. And I mentioned Larry Coker, who was the coach of what many believe is the greatest college football team of all time, the 2001 Miami Hurricanes. You also have Butch Davis, who was a Miami Hurricane coach and a Dallas Cowboy coach. And you can throw Jimmy Johnson in there as well, because he also fit the bill with the Miami Hurricanes and the actual Dallas Cowboys. Now, again, most of those coaches, again, Jimmy Johnson went into broadcasting, but Larry Coker and Butch Davis still coaching for you guys who don't know. And nobody's talking about how great of a coach they are anymore. You know why? Because they're not winning. And why aren't they winning? Did they start coaching differently? Did they change their approach to the game? Did they not understand how recruiting works anymore? Or that they couldn't get the best money players that money could buy? Just the facts, not the process. When you talk about college athletics, when I talk about pay the players, no play, the reason why the NCAA wants to go out their way to avoid players getting paid, because they've been getting paid for years, but they've been getting paid pennies on the dollar, not knowing their worth, taking hundreds while people making hundreds of thousands. And essentially the reason why athletes take those hundreds of dollars, because they don't know that you're valued, don't know that you're worth. And at the end of the day, they believe that without these so-called coaches, that they won't be able to attain or be successful as they would be otherwise without them. But here's the facts. Sports in particular is a business, like I say all the time. It's not a game, it's all business. It's a height, weight, speed, measurable, comprehension based off what you can do and translate. All these major sports and industry care about one thing. Can you perform on the field for them and keep you stay healthy while doing that? Can you help them generate revenue? Simple as that. In many cases, they don't even care about your character, what you do off the field. At the end of the day, they'll let you do things that screw up so only they can change your contract to make it so much like, oh, well, yeah, we love you, but for a lot less money. And then those same coaches, those same players that wasn't developed for those coaches that you say was so great are off the hook. These same guys got these character issues with women, domestic violence, can't make it to practice on time, come from these prestigious programs where at the end of the day, you want to say this is the greatest coach of all time. We're talking about an industry in the sport, particular football, where they say the most important position in football is quarterback. And we got all these people saying that, but yet we got the guy you say, Nick Saban, is the greatest coach of all time, never produced a quarterback worth talking about. Just the facts, not the process. You can't have your cake and eat it too, people. Again, trust the facts, not the process. And the fact of the matter is that people continue, because what they see on TV or Instagram, fall for the same type of scenario. In the sports business, understand this, there's way more coaches than there is jobs at the professional level that these kids and these families seek to get them to. You guys can think about it that way. So the fact of the matter is you got all these different coaches at every level and all these different coaches all around the world coaching, again, for a fee. So when people talk about coaching as a thankless job, ask yourself this question. If it's so thankless, why are they getting fired to go away with $20 million to say bye-bye when they failed miserably? And they get rehired after failing. For one reason, because they can manipulate, control the actual quote-unquote student athlete to do what they do for nothing. Hat, t-shirt, cotton t-shirts. You know, again, this country, way back when we used to pick cotton, now they just give the cotton to us and then literally put a shirt on and call you a champion. I don't know how many of these coaches continue to send these, screenshot championship, I'm an all-star, printed out awards welcome. Again, and I said, watch people look on to sign up for NCSA, another scam. 1 million people talking about they're going to help you get recruited and get you a scholarship. Especially now and today with technology, when it comes to huddle and everything else you can use from a resource, including pre-post game too, of actually evaluate where you stand. If you actually are capable of playing in college based off the same height, weight, speed measurables that I spoke about earlier. But most people don't want to hear that. They want to hear that their kid is great. They want to hear that their kid is going to be the best ever. But understand, this is the industry that has 1% that makes it. And out of that 1%, 80% of that next 1% go broke within 2 years, 2.5. So in business, we talk about terms of return of investment. So you spend 20 years of investing money, time, and energy, commitment to try to become 1% of something that basically 1% of that 80% go broke in that. But don't take the time to even think about understand those numbers first. 2, if you spend 20 years and you basically get 2.5 years of return of that investment, that's a bad business deal. So if you're willing to walk that walk based off that trust the fact mantra, then I can already tell you, when I assess you as a talent scout, how this is going to end up for you. Mentally, physically, emotionally, socially, financially, and professionally. It's not hard for me to tell and see. Your circle of influence, the further up you go, at the end of the day, understanding how the sports business actually works, from the longevity, from the realities of what goes into this, starting with taxes. You go to college and you talk about you're educated, but yet in 3 to 4 years, you never heard about a tax. Because the NCAA and the powers that be, those same coaches, again, don't feel like it's in your best interest to know about what taxes are, because at the end of the day, they're making money off of you and they're paying those taxes. And they're recruiting the next guy off of you. And so when you're out the league in the 2.5 years, you got nothing to show for it. They're still using your name to generate revenue while they handed you a cotton t-shirt and aluminum ring with some cubic zirconias. Just the facts, not the process. In 2021, you can't talk about Black Lives Matter. Just like I said, I was the first one to speak out when things happened this summer with George Floyd and all the other African-American atrocities that we've known over the years that happened. But at the end of the day, those same coaches in those same communities where they got those kids from in those same living rooms had nothing to say about what happened to George Floyd or people that look like them in their communities. Because the reality is the kids that's found out, the parents that's found out what this really is. This is a business. And at the end of the day, by putting a Black Lives Matter decal on your actual helmet does not mean Black Lives Matters to them outside of what money that those Black lives generate for that actual university and that actual coach. Trust the facts, not the process. So you have that scenario, then you have this scenario, men killing themselves. You have the scenario where these athletes going broke. Why is 80% of athletes going broke within 2 years of retirement if you're college educated? How we skip over to this financial advisement when, again, these same people in the industry want the majority of these kids want to talk about investments, don't understand what a true investment in themselves really mean. Investment doesn't mean just the stock market in the Dow. But a lot of these people in this industry, representation, if you will, want to associate and connect these same athletes to these guys that work in the stock market. Why? Because the athlete has no idea how that actually works. But you talk about the actual skill set or the actual knowledge that that actual advisor has, it's only to do one thing. Risk that athlete's money in the actual market. Not the ability to take that athlete's money, to put it in themselves, to invest in long-term generational wealth for him and his family. So when you go into a career that, you know, average 2.5 in football, 3.5 in basketball, and about 4.5 in baseball, fully guaranteed, by the way, why would you basically invest in giving somebody something that without you and your height, weight, speed, measurables, and health, that basically it's a one-time thing. It's transactional. Why do you feel like at the end of the day it's in your best interest to pay a percentage on something that at the end of the day isn't guaranteed to you but guaranteed to somebody else? Because you spent the last 20 years in that actual career that you seek. Now understanding that it's a business. Now understanding that over those 20 years, every single person you came in contact with, for the most part, was actually generating revenue off your decisions. So at the end of the day, everything they said to you is basically going to be directed on what is best for them by using you. Trust the facts, not the process. So again, it breaks my heart that the media continues to ignore the fact that Lewis Nix is gone. They said that he got shot. They said he was missing. Then they said that he's dead, but they skipped the whole part of how did he die. Vincent Jackson was found in a hotel room. Again, I know how these people died. End of the day, I've been in this business. I worked in the mental health field. Again, I don't mind sharing with people. Again, I was in a dark spot a long time ago because I went through the same process as every single one of these athletes. I trusted the process. I trusted the coaches. I trusted the system. And I also been in a system where I actually became a coach And I watched the coach tell me to tell a guy to get on a bus and take 18-hour trip to come there. Only after he got there, my counterpart coach, who happened to be Caucasian, who told him to come there, didn't want him after one day. And then basically wanted me, the African-American coach, to tell him to go back to where he came from and make up some baloney excuse why he didn't want him there. He wanted me to lie to his face of why he was being sent back. I couldn't do it. So this is what I did. One, I told the kid when he got there, he wasn't prepared to be a professional athlete the way we thought he was when he got there. Two, at the end of the day, you should have thought about when you came that 18-hour bus ride to play in the arena, that you were fully prepared for what it is. And his response was to me, well, coach said. And I said to him, well, I'm coach now and I'm telling you. And then after that guy went back when he was absolutely furious. This kid was about 6'6", 285 pounds out of Arkansas. Why did that Caucasian coach send me to do it? Because he didn't want that African-American athlete to look at him for what he really just did. He wanted him to have his anger and vitriol towards me. And that's why many of these African-American coaches that come into your living room to recruit you, to tell you what you want to hear, but not what you need to know, end up having all you guys in a transfer portal at the end of the night. And for those African-American coaches that continue to want to be the do boy, the guy that's going to basically be the bad messenger, the one that's going to try to pretend to be your friend while he's sending you on your way, the one that's going to put your arm around you, call you family, and then get rid of you, the one that's going to basically say that, you know, I got you, and then turn around and call you all types of names behind your back. Because that's what coaches do. Because, you know, like I said, I've been in the room. You know, my career, my pro career, I purposely went team to team to see how things work with general managers and coaches. One day I was going to try to be a coach, wanted to be a coach long term. So again, if I wanted to be involved in something, I had to learn to understand, but not just one perspective, but many perspectives. And so that's what I did. And what I found was that this entire system in sports was the same exact thing. It didn't matter who the coach was. It didn't matter who the actual athlete was. It mattered what the actual athlete can do on that field. And that's what's going to dictate whether that coach remained employed or not. Just the facts, not the process. So once I always say their voices will be heard. So when I talk about why we wouldn't send your African-American sons to play for Kirk Ferentz, Brian Ferentz, or the University of Iowa, as a talent scout, as an advocate of athletes, I have found that their operation, and when it comes to African-American athletes and their families, over 20 years, allowing Chris Doyle, again, through racism and bullying, to operate without punition to get this man to be the highest paid strength coach for what? For putting kids' lives in danger? Because that's what he did. And when he did that, the first time, the investigation that was had independently allowed him to continue to do it. And no one was there to step up and say, hey, he should be gone. Because at the end of the day, their voices were not being heard. Because the athletes did not know their worth. Because the athletes did not know their realities and what this business really dictates. And at the end of the day, because of what Chris Doyle and Iowa did to these athletes, I'm praying that the future doesn't turn into the same type of scenario as Louis Nix and Vincent Jackson. That's why I'm here. I'm not here to make friends. I'm not here to ask coaches that, hey, at the end of the day, can you refer me to this kid, this client? I've been a coach. I refuse to be an agent. I'm not going to devalue myself to the athlete at any level. So therefore, at the end of the day, what I am and with the lane that I'm in, I chose to be in, I made this lane to educate and empower, protect the athletes and the family's best interests alone. And what that means in plain English is this. If you coaches want to continue to ignore and look the other way when you are the reason why a lot of these things continue to happen, and when they happen, you look the other way and want to keep talking about stats. Everybody want to talk about we want to play in a pandemic, and now at the end of the day, when Duke and Kentucky and all these other teams, the Blue Bloods get smashed, no one's not saying Coach K and Coach Roy Williams can't coach anymore. They don't got the talent. Therefore, they can't win. But you remember, it was just 2 years ago when everybody was talking about Zion being sued because at the end of the day, his parents may have got something. Why? He generated basically hundreds of millions for the NCAA and Duke. You don't see Coach K and Duke coming to Zion's defense when he went through that court case. You don't see the NCAA saying that, hey, what kind of great education Zion had there. The reason why this industry continues to be what it is because you continue to smoke and mirrors to pull over the wolves in the eyes of the uneducated, uninformed, uneducated athlete and their parents. That don't work with me. That's why we're here. Because if they hire us to educate and empower, protect them, that stuff's not going to fly. And at the end of the day, we find and identify you as a sports trafficker, as someone that's manipulating, someone that's taking advantage of, someone that's basically overstepping your bounds as a coach in order to generate revenue for you. We're going to direct it direct you to them to go elsewhere. Transfer portal, next coach up, next university up. And so at the end of the day, please, for all you out there that are talking about Nick Saban, once again, understand what you're saying. You don't understand what you speak of. For you guys that want to scream out about players, name what you see. For you coaches trying to use certain examples to get what you want from other players. That's not what coaching is. A coach is someone that, for one, stay in their lane. It's X's and O's. Teach them. Mistakes, correct them. The human beings learn how to basically manage human beings. The term is, in the mental health field, meet them where they are. So don't talk about hard coaching, because you don't even know what, again, none of you guys that got a coaching job had to take a test or had to go somewhere and get actually acclimated in a sense of how to go about dealing with people. You convince some African-American athlete in most cases to come play for you based on what you saw. And what you saw is what he was better than everybody else. And many of those high school coaches now currently in college made millions of dollars off of those same athletes, only to have those same athletes that they coached at one point no longer even finishing college, back in the street where they started. Not a phone call from you, coach. Not how you doing, sir. What can I do to help you? You look at the situation with Delonte West and Mark Cuban. Mark Cuban, of all people, had to go help Delonte West. Well, it was all them people, like I said before, in that 20-year ROI, return of investment, before Delonte West got to the point where he was. But see, don't expect the financial advisor to tell you to stop spending money on the NASDAQ. Don't expect that jeweler to stop telling you to buy that chain. Don't expect them girls on the Instagram to tell you to stop renting them boats. Don't expect any of that. That's their lifeline. And that comes from you, off the athlete. But guess what? When you can't provide those anymore, those same coaches, those same advisors, those same girls, they move on to the next. And particularly when it comes to the athletes, they're going to go right to your teammate. Next player up. Just the facts, not the process. So, like I said again, this whole scenario, what sports really is and what you guys get involved with and what you get excited about, National Signing Day, letter of intent, again, that's a whole ploy, marketing plan to use you to generate revenue for them. And at the end of the day, have you signed a contract, a one-way deal, named as the national letter of intent, where that same coach who just got you to go to that school is taking a job elsewhere for your signature. He's not even going to say goodbye. Again, I'm speaking from experience, knowledge, people that basically hire us to fix things that they didn't understand before in the first hand. And this is where, when I talk about the history lesson of 1905 and 1906, when slaves were freed, as we just finished Black History Month, when slaves were freed, you had W.E. Du Bois said in 1905 that slaves will be free. We'll be equal. And when we said we'll be equal, he said that we'll be equal and then we'll have the same amount of rights as everybody else. In 1906, in March, there was Leavenworth, Kansas, which is the first prison system. And then in March 1906 was the NCAA came at the exact same time. So for the uneducated, now free slave who committed a crime and had proper representation, was in jail working for free. And for the other uneducated, now newly free slave, was now getting an education in the NCAA. And so for the people that continue to talk about, well, if they pay the players, how are we going to pay the players? Once again, you don't ask how you're going to pay the players when you fire a coach like Gus Malzahn at Auburn, and then you fire him and give him $20 million to leave. Then you don't give T. Martin a job, who everybody sent T. Martin into the living room to talk to these parents, who was a Tennessee legend, black quarterback, one of the early ones that was actually doing it back with Charlie Ward, and then turn around and go give Josh Heupel a job. And then turn around and hire Gus Malzahn when he took his $20 million less than a month ago and is now rehired. As I said before, the NFL, you can't get your coaching problems fixed to a situation you understand how the situation works. As I said before, I'm saying it publicly. The SEC buys football players. I'm the player's rep. If you don't think I know what all the bodies are, you don't pay attention to the answers to the test. And for that reason, if you're going to be Alabama, you're going to continue to do this farce of a coaching system with the best money that players can buy, can be bought. And then you turn around and give guys like Bill O'Brien, who had a horrible coaching job in Houston, but then you turn around and give him a job at Alabama. So what that means is what? They're going to get Alabama going to the championship then, and then Bill is going to basically jump around and get another job over somebody else. So once again, if you're talking about why we don't have minority coaches in the National Football League, two things. One, the African-American coaches do not understand the business of sport. Again, I'm doing my best and my company doing our part to try to teach them this, because once again, you can be a player in the game, you can be a coach in the game. Don't mean you know the business of the game. That's one. And two, if you're going to basically allow coaches to go jump on the bandwagon of the best team in the country simply because they're going to win regardless, no matter who the coach is, it can be Elba the Fudd. And then at the end of the day, turn around and get a Jets job to the coach and say he interviewed, say, well, he was a champion. Not paying attention. And it's a sad state of affairs. So once again, we got mental health and wealth. Why are these athletes not feeling like their lives matter by the time they're in their early 30s? We know why. Why are these kids going broke within 2 years of retirement? Why are all these kids in the transfer portal? Because at the end of the day, you tell them to trust the process. But who's identifying what in that process were they lied to about by the same person making money off of their backs after their labor? So I'm not giving any of these guys a pass. And I'm not here to try to sugarcoat nothing. At the end of the day, coaches, y'all better get it right. Parents, you better get it right. Parents, it's your job to raise your kids, not these coaches. They are not your babysitters. So for all you parents out there that want to take your kids and drop them off the youth program, think this coach is going to literally raise your kid instead of you? Or y'all didn't see what happened with that coach in Florida that slapped them two kids in an AAU, a 12-year-old football game? Just slapped them for no reason because he didn't like how they played. You don't understand how that long-term effect that I'm having on those kids. And then when the next Vincent Jackson or Lewis Nix is gone, you're going to look the other way again? Not on my watch. Not on my watch. So again, before you guys start praising and throwing these coaches out there to be the greatest thing to ever walk and move and see, pay attention to all the players that came through their system. Ask yourself where Trent Richardson is right now. Take a look at Reuben Foster's Wikipedia. Ask yourself why you was in the National Football League with grown men and all of a sudden you lasted like a week. And then understand why the NCAA puts these same type of guys to the forefront. Because at the end of the day, those are the programs in the schools that want to make sure that the African-American athletes don't know their value, don't know their worth. Those are the guys that want to give you the hat and the T-shirt in exchange with hundreds of millions of dollars after the 20 years of investment. To only get 2.5 years out of it. And a lot of them got injuries that wasn't even reported or actually properly diagnosed. So therefore, it's even shorter than that. But y'all okay. Trust the process. Y'all okay. I'm not okay. Their family's not okay. And like I said, again, if you want to talk about making a change and Black Lives Really Matter, the first thing we got to do is know our worth. My name is Robert T.Green, the CEO of Pre-Postgame, and educate and empower. Protect the athletes and the family's best interests alone. You guys will well be blessed and have a great and wonderful week.